Hey, in this video, we're gonna get creative in Adobe XD, a design and prototyping tool. We're gonna be creating artboards in order to create some basic shapes. This is gonna be the first step in creating the login and sign up buttons for our app. And we won't stop there. We're also gonna be creating our app's logos as well. I'm Elise, an Adobe XD Enterprise instructor, and I've been designing websites and apps as a UX UI designer since 2015. I also am a design speaker and host tons of free events every week. Before we get started, if you have any questions on the steps or the tools, please feel free to leave it in the comments below and we'll get back to you ASAP. If you want more content like this from Career Foundry, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to get notified of new releases. This is part of Career Foundry's free UI short course. If you're interested in following along with the lessons, go ahead and sign up for free. Click the link in the description below. All right, let's dive into Adobe XD and get started. Aside from color, text, and imagery, most of what an app screen is comprised of are various shapes. In Adobe XD, you can draw shapes in two ways. You can use the pen tool, which we can see over here on the left-hand side of our toolbar. And this is kind of like with paper to pen, that free flow style. And then there are the built-in shapes, right? The rectangle, the ellipse, the polygon, and the line. And this is actually what we're going to be focusing on today. Let's play around with some of these shapes on an artboard. So here we have an artboard. I used A as the shortcut, or you can access artboard from here on the toolbar, right? So we had made a shape, a rectangle earlier. Let's do it again. So first I'm going to select rectangle and I can hold it down and make a rectangle. But let's say I want to make a square. What you need to do is hold Shift to actually make that square shape. Moving on, we have the ellipse. So you can kind of make any sort of circular shape, but if I want a perfect circle, you're going to hold down Shift. So hold down Shift to make that perfect circle. Cool. Next, we have the polygon. So I can make any sort of polygon shapes I want here. Now, if I hold down Shift, it's going to maintain the same width on each side. All right, and finally, we have line. So if I select line here, I can just make any sort of line I want. Now, if I want a straight line, guess what you hold down? Shift, right? When I hold down Shift, I can't move this line anywhere. It's going to be perfectly straight. So we've covered basic shapes in Adobe XD, but let's say we want to do something much more complex. That's when we're going to use functions called Boolean operations. If you think about some of the most well-known logos, they can actually be reduced to just a couple of basic shapes. So if you think about YouTube, it's really just a rectangle and a triangle. There are 4 types of Boolean operations that you can do in Adobe XD. Now, the first thing you need to do is have a few shapes in order to enable that function. So first, let's get a couple shapes on the board. I am going to use R, the shortcut, and create a rectangle. And I am just going to take that, select it, and copy and paste another one here. So we have 2. So you need to actually have a couple of shapes in order to enable the functionality. So here I have 2 rectangles. I'm just going to select them both, and then I'm going to go over onto the right side in my property inspector. And at the very top here where it says repeat grid, right next to it are those 4 types of Boolean operations. The first one is union. So when I select union, as you can see, this rectangle here, or the 2 rectangles here, have combined together to create one solid shape, right? I'm gonna undo that. The next Boolean operation is subtract. So if I select that, what it does is it deletes the top shape from the shape below. The next Boolean operation here is intersect. So when I select that, it only displays the overlapping areas. The final Boolean operation here is exclude overlap. So when I select that, it shows everything but the overlapping areas. All right, so now we know a little bit about shapes and Boolean operations. Let's begin creating our first button. Now, typically most buttons begin with a rectangle shape. So let's start with that. So on the left-hand side of my toolbar, I'm going to select the rectangle tool, and I'm going to go into my artboard and click and drag to make that rectangle. Now you might be wondering, how large of a rectangle am I supposed to make here? Small, large? What we want to make sure is that it's large enough for the user to be able to click with ease, right? That touch target is large enough for the user to be able to click. Now, the other thing you want to consider is the fact that we're going to have to add text into the button. So a button is really comprised of a shape plus text. So we want to make sure the text is large enough to read inside that button. We'll get into text actually in tomorrow's lesson. Once you've laid out your shape, you're going to see two different types of points here. There is the hollow point on the outside, and if I drag that, that's how I can change the shape. Then there are filled in points as well. And if I select and I drag, that actually changes the radius of the shape. So it can be a really rounded shape, or it can be more of a square shape. The other way that you can change the radius is in your property inspector. Over here on the right-hand side, you see that it's already enabled this little blue rectangle. If I want to change it to, let's say, 30, it's going to automatically change all sides. So now I want to center my button. So I'm going to select my shape, and I want to actually perfectly align it so it's center inside the artboard. I can actually drag it, and this little pink line is showing up, showing me like right when I go into the center, it enables that pink line. The other way that you can do it is going over into your property inspector. Above the Boolean operations, you can select the center alignment right there. So if I select it, it's perfectly centered now. Now I'm going to be creating two buttons, a sign up and a login button. So I want two of these. I can actually just, when this is selected, this shape is selected, or this layer is selected, I can copy and paste it. And now there are two of that same shape. The other thing that I can do is go into the layers panel here, right click and select duplicate. And then I have two of that same shape as well. So now we're going to rename our layers. You're going to go over on the left-hand side to your layers panel. And if you have trouble finding it, you're going to actually just make sure this center button over here with these three buttons on the bottom left-hand corner is selected. That's your layers panel, and you should be able to see your layers from there. In order to rename a layer, I can select this top one and double click and just type in sign up button. The other thing I can do is right click and select rename, and that's the alternate way to rename a layer. Login button. So now I have my two shapes ready in order to start going to that next step of applying some more styling and text to it. All right, we're going to leave this artboard as is, and we're going to start to create now our logos, which is really exciting. So now let's create our app logo. Now, if you recall, we have our two different app options. We have the Activist app and the Ethical Eater app. And there are two different types of logos for them. We are going to review both types of logos. Now, feel free to use this as more of a guide. Feel free to have fun, play around, and make your own type of logo. So first, we're going to begin with the leaf logo for the Ethical Eater app. Now, the first thing we need to do is create an artboard. So if you recall, on the left-hand side in your toolbar, on the second to bottom option is artboard. I can select that. And I can select artboard size, one of the default options. But in this case, I want to create a new artboard size, 200 by 200. So I can actually just click, hold, and drag to make that artboard. Now, if I let go, it doesn't have to be perfectly 200, 200, which you can see right here at the very top. It says 175 by 167. If I want to adjust and change it, I can simply just select those options and type in 200 by 200 right there. Now I'm ready to start making my shapes. So now I'm going to make my first shape. I'm going to go back into the toolbar and I'm going to select rectangle. Now from here, I actually want to create a square. So I'm going to hold down Shift and drag to make that square shape. From here, I'm going to change the dimensions on the right-hand side, again in my property inspector. Where it says width, I'm going to change it to 110. And then height, I'm going to change it to 110. That's right, so it's a perfect square. Now I'm going to take that point, the filled in point, and I'm just going to drag it so that it has the radius of 33. I can see it right there. So right here in my property inspector is where I can see 33. Now, of course, you have the option to drag that point or simply just put in 33 here as well. So now that I have my first rectangle, I actually want to make a second rectangle, and I am going to just right click in the layers panel and select duplicate. Now I have two of the rectangles. I am going to also now go back to select, the select tool, and I'm just going to take these two rectangles and have it look like so. So I'm just kind of staggering one over the other, just like that, okay? So I've selected these two layers, and now I'm going to go into my property inspector to the Boolean operations, and I'm going to choose intersect. Now you already see this little leaf looking shape here. How cute, right? But we're not done yet. So from here, I am actually going to add a rectangle. Again, you can select it from the toolbar, or if you remember the shortcut, which is R, you can also just select R to create that rectangle shape. From here, I want to add a few more rectangles. So I can select rectangle in the toolbar or use the shortcut R. So I'm going to use that shortcut. So here I'm making my rectangle shape, and I actually want the width and the height to be 38. So over here in my property inspector on the left side, I'm changing this to 38 by 38. Then I'm also going to change the radius over here down below in this middle section to 14 pixels. So there's my shape. From here, I'm again going to go back to that layer on the left side, right click and duplicate. So I have two of these rectangles. I'm going to go into select mode to select the select tool here, or the shortcut, which is V. I'm starting to use shortcuts with you guys now. Now that you're getting comfortable, hopefully. So I'm selecting this shape and I'm just bringing it over here on the right side. So now I have these two shapes on top of one another over the big leaf-like shape. So now what I'm going to do is just select these two layers here. I can select a layer, hold down Shift, and select the other layer. Now just these two layers are selected. I'm going to go into my Boolean operations over in the upper right-hand corner, and I'm going to again choose intersect. Now there's this cute little leaf within the big leaf, right? And now we're basically almost done here. What I'm going to do now, for now, we're not getting into colors and all that. I'm just going to select this particular layer here. And I'm going to go into the property inspector where it says fill. And I'm just going to select fill and turn it to gray. Just so that there's quite the difference between that outer layer and that inner layer. Now the final thing I'm going to do is just select all of these layers, and I'm going to right click and select group. Now here I have my first completed logo. Woohoo! All right. So now let's talk about the chat logo for the Activist app. You're going to do the same thing here. We're going to create an artboard. On the left-hand side, go into the toolbar, the second to bottom artboard, and I'm just going to click, hold, and drag and make the artboard. Again, I can just go over here on the right-hand side and adjust the width to 200 and the height to 200. Good. Now we have our next artboard. So for this logo, we're going to use a few different shapes. I'm going to go into the toolbar and I'm going to select the ellipse option. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key as I click, hold, and drag to make this circle. Great. Now I'm going to go into the polygon tool here to make a triangle. And I'm also going to hold down Shift so that it maintains the same width across all sides. So now I'm going to reposition this triangle. How I can do that is I can grab one of these hollow points, and when I hover over it, you're going to see it when it turns into this sort of rounded, curved shape. Once I can see this rounded option, I can click, hold, and drag to rotate it. So I'm actually going to rotate it a little bit here, and then I'm going to select, and I'm just going to reposition it over in the bottom left-hand corner of the chat bubble. From here, what I'm going to do is select both of these layers, and I'm going to go into my property inspector to the Boolean operations, and I'm going to select the add button. From here, now it's created just one shape, and it already looks like a chat bubble, right? From here, I am actually just going to go into where it says border in my property inspector, and I'm going to select here where it says size. I'm going to put it to 6. So now it has a larger border around this shape, which makes it look much more pronounced like an icon. So there you have it. That's how you make logos. Pretty simple, right? Go ahead and feel free to, again, make some changes, make it more of your own, have fun. You can also look at other popular or famous logos for inspiration as well. So now your daily task is to make the 2 shapes for your buttons, the login and the sign up screen buttons, as well as make your app logo. In the next video, we're going to talk about one of the other most important aspects of design, which is typography. We're going to put in some original copy into our app screens, and we're going to learn the basics of typesetting. I hope this video has given you a better understanding of shapes and the different tools that you can use in order to create them. This was lesson 3 in Career Foundry's free UI short course. Sign up via the link below and work alongside with us. If you've already signed up for this short course and are watching this in the tutorial pages, make sure to keep reading this tutorial page on this topic. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel to get more content just like this. If you have any questions on interface design or any of the topics that we've covered, please feel free to leave it in the comments below and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks so much for watching and stay tuned for the next video on typography.